Do you remember those grocery aisles? Bright, loud, and filled with the snacks that made being a kid feel endless? In the 1990s, every box, bag, and candy felt like pure excitement waiting to happen. When did grocery shopping stop feeling like an adventure worth remembering? Dunkaroos were the crown jewel of every 1990s lunchbox, a perfect mix of sugar, style, and status. These bite-sized cookies came packaged with a tiny cup of frosting, turning snack time into a dessert adventure. The ritual was sacred. Dip, swirl, and coat the cookie until it looked more frosting than dough. Kids compared frosting levels like badges of honor, arguing over who got more per pack. It was the one snack that turned 5 minutes at the cafeteria table into a full-blown party. The kangaroo mascot, Duncan, wasn't just selling cookies, he was selling cool. The ads screamed with color, attitude, and that unmistakable 90s confidence. Parents hated them for being pure sugar. Kids loved them for that exact reason. Opening a pack felt like opening a portal to childhood rebellion. Sweet, sticky, and unapologetic. Dunkaroos disappeared for years, only to make a nostalgic comeback decades later, proving that sometimes the past really does taste better. Gushers fruit snacks were part candy, part science experiment, and entirely unforgettable. Each chewy little gem was packed with a mysterious liquid center that exploded the moment you bit down. It wasn't just a snack, it was an experience. Every pack came with that moment of suspense. Would this one gush perfectly or squirt sideways onto your shirt? The commercials made it look wild, kids' heads literally morphing into fruit. In real life, it was messy, but somehow that made it better. The flavor lineup, tropical, berry, and mystery, was a rainbow of artificial genius. Gushers weren't pretending to be healthy fruit snacks. They were proudly chaotic. They were the sticky symbol of a generation that didn't care about nutrition facts, only flavor explosions. Even today, just hearing the word Gushers brings back memories of after-school hangouts, juice-stained fingers, and that first bite of unstoppable, gooey joy. Ecto Cooler Hi-C was the ultimate 90s drink, radioactive green, sweet as liquid candy, and completely tied to Ghostbusters fever. Originally created as a tie-in for the cartoon The Real Ghostbusters, it quickly took on a life of its own. Kids didn't even need to know who Slimer was, they just knew that bright green meant fun. The citrusy tang wasn't natural, but it was delicious in a way only 90s sugar could be. The box design alone, complete with that grinning green ghost, made it feel like you were drinking from a comic book. Lunchboxes across the country glowed with Ecto Cooler cartons, and playground trades were serious business. You've got Ecto Cooler? I'll give you 2 Capri Suns. It became a cultural artifact, bottled nostalgia for an age when color and chaos ruled snack time. When it was discontinued, fans mourned. When it was briefly re-released, adults lined up to buy it again, not for the taste, but for the memories it poured out. Surge Soda was the liquid embodiment of the word extreme. Released in the mid-90s as Coca-Cola's answer to Mountain Dew, it came in a neon green can that looked like it could power a skateboard. The drink promised adrenaline in a bottle, an energy boost before energy drinks were even a thing. Every can felt like an invitation to chaos, an explosion of sugar, caffeine, and citrus that hit harder than anything else on the shelf. The ads made you feel like cracking open a Surge could transform an ordinary afternoon into an action movie. For kids growing up in the 90s, drinking one felt like joining a secret club of unstoppable energy. Its marketing screamed rebellion, all graffiti logos, explosions, and kids jumping off rooftops. Every gulp was like tasting citrus chaos. Parents called it caffeinated sugar water. But that only made it cooler. Surge was banned in schools, whispered about like contraband, and adored by every kid who wanted to feel like a daredevil. It was more than soda. It was an attitude, a bright green middle finger to moderation. Even now, people remember that electric buzz, that rush of flavor that somehow felt alive. It wasn't just a drink, it was a moment in time bottled up for a generation that refused to slow down. Surge didn't just wake you up, it woke up an era. And when it vanished in the early 2000s, It left behind an entire generation of nostalgic fans who swore no drink has ever come close. For a moment, Surge wasn't just a beverage. It was the soundtrack to growing up loud. 3D Doritos were like snack technology from the future. The concept was simple. Take the classic Dorito, puff it up with air, and turn it into a crunchy, hollow triangle of flavor. But the experience? That was something else. Opening a bag felt like unsealing a futuristic invention, chips that looked too perfect to be real. They were light yet loud, the kind of crunch that echoed through a cafeteria. Kids treated them like collectibles, saving the rare unbroken ones like trophies. They crackled differently, louder, crispier, more dramatic. The flavors like nacho cheese and Cool Ranch were the same, but the shape made them feel elevated, like eating chips from another dimension. The commercials played into that sci-fi vibe, complete with futuristic fonts and slow-motion crunches. For a brief, shining moment, 3D Doritos felt like the next big thing. Kids smuggled them into classrooms and sleepovers like prized possessions. They became the snack of the future that arrived too soon, vanishing before the world was ready to appreciate them. Decades later, their return sparked that same curiosity, the question of whether snacks could ever feel that cool again. And then, just as suddenly, they were gone, leaving behind the memory of that satisfying crunch that no flat chip could replicate. When they returned decades later, it wasn't just a comeback, it was a resurrection. Oreo O's cereal was breakfast gone deliciously wrong, and that's exactly why everyone loved it. Imagine waking up and pouring a bowl of mini chocolate Oreo rings swimming in milk that instantly turned to dessert. It was sugary, crunchy, and pure 1990s excess. Parents rolled their eyes, but kids thought it was genius. You weren't just eating cereal. You were eating cookies and somehow calling it breakfast. Every spoonful was a rebellion disguised as a balanced meal. The commercials leaned hard into the fun, featuring kids breakdancing through clouds of cookie crumbs. It became an icon of cartoon mornings and sleep-deprived Saturday marathons. When Oreo O's disappeared from shelves, it took a piece of childhood with it. The cereal aisle hasn't been the same since, no matter how many limited editions they release. Oreo O's didn't just feed kids, it fueled memories of the sweetest kind. Planters. Cheese balls were neon orange perfection in a can. They came in bright blue tins that seemed to shine even in dim kitchen lights, each one stuffed with crunchy, cheesy spheres that left your fingers glowing. Opening the lid was a ceremony. The soft pop, the wave of fake cheese aroma, the first handful disappearing before you even noticed. They weren't real food, but they were real joy. You could polish off a can in one sitting and still want more. Cheese balls weren't just a snack, they were personality. They turned every movie night, sleepover, and after-school hangout into a greasy-fingered feast. And when they vanished in the early 2000s, fans begged Planters to bring them back, proof that nostalgia tastes like powdered cheddar. When they finally returned decades later, the first pop of that lid was more than flavor. It was a time machine. Crystal Pepsi was a bold experiment that tasted like the future but confused almost everyone. A completely clear cola, it was marketed as pure, clean, and revolutionary. People expected a citrus drink, but nope, it was just Pepsi, without the caramel color. The first sip was disorienting. Your brain said lemon lime, but your taste buds screamed cola. It was strange, fascinating, and oddly addictive. The commercials were epic too, complete with Van Halen soundtracks and shining city skylines. Crystal Pepsi became a cultural flashpoint, a soda that defied expectations and still managed to make history. It didn't last long, less than 2 years, but it left an unforgettable impression. Decades later, it returned for nostalgic fans who remembered the thrill of drinking something that looked wrong but felt so right. It was weird, it was wonderful, and it was unmistakably 90s. French Toast Crunch was Saturday morning comfort in a cereal box. Every piece looked like a tiny slice of golden toast, glistening with cinnamon sugar coating. It smelled like a breakfast diner in your kitchen. When you poured milk over it, the scent filled the air like maple syrup on a hot griddle. The crunch was perfect, the sweetness just enough to keep you sneaking handfuls straight from the box. It wasn't breakfast, it was dessert disguised as cereal. The ads showed cartoon slices of toast dancing across screens, and every kid who tried it swore it tasted like happiness. Parents might have rolled their eyes at the sugar content, but it didn't matter. For the kids who grew up with it, French Toast Crunch wasn't just cereal. It was a ritual, a memory you could taste. When it disappeared, people missed it like an old friend, and when it returned years later, it proved that nostalgia really does come with syrup. Kid cuisine dinners were the definition of microwave-era magic. Packaged in bright blue trays, they offered a full meal, mini corn dogs, mac and cheese, and a brownie, all ready in minutes. For latchkey kids, it was independence in a box. You peeled back the plastic, listened to the hum of the microwave, and felt like a chef. The sections of the tray kept everything separate because heaven forbid the peas touched the brownie. The packaging was loud, the food was lukewarm, and somehow it was perfect. Cartoon mascots promised fun, and those neon colors practically glowed under the kitchen light. Every dinner was an event, a celebration of convenience and kid power. Looking back, it was terrible and wonderful at the same time. A childhood snapshot of freedom and processed flavor. Nothing today tastes quite like those microwaved brownies, and maybe that's for the best, but we'll never stop remembering them. Butterfinger BBs were the candy that proved great things came in tiny, melty packages. They were little bite-sized Butterfinger balls, sold in a shiny orange bag that promised all the crunch and peanut buttery goodness of the original bar, just smaller and cooler. The problem was they melted faster than a 90s kid running home after the streetlights came on. By the time you poured a handful into your palm, half of them had already turned into sticky caramel rubble. Still, we loved them for the chaos. You'd pop them one after another, the chocolate coating cracking to reveal that familiar flaky crunch. The commercials made them feel rebellious, like candy made for rule breakers and after-school legends. They were gone by the early 2000s, victims of their own messiness. But every nostalgic candy fan still dreams of their comeback. They weren't convenient, but they were unforgettable. Butterfinger BBs were everything the 90s stood for. Sweet, chaotic, and just a little too much for their own good. PB Crisps were the snack that disappeared way too soon. Imagine crispy, cookie-shaped shells shaped like peanuts stuffed with creamy peanut butter inside, light, flaky, and addictive. They hit that perfect balance between salty and sweet, like a peanut butter cookie that had evolved into its final form. The smell hit you first, a toasted, nutty sweetness that could make any kitchen feel like heaven. Each bite shattered in your mouth with that buttery crunch, followed by the smooth peanut filling melting right after. It wasn't just a snack, it was an experience you could taste, smell, and feel all at once. Every bite crunched, then melted, and then made you instantly reach for another. It was the kind of snack you didn't just eat, you devoured. People kept boxes hidden in pantries the way adults hide good chocolate now. The packaging showed a happy little peanut character smiling like he knew the secret to happiness. He kind of did. Even now, decades later, fans post online petitions and social media campaigns begging for PB Crisps to make a comeback. Few snacks earn that kind of loyalty, but these did, with every flake and crumble burned into memory. They weren't just cookies, they were comfort disguised as crunch. Then, without warning, PB Crisps vanished in the mid-90s. Fans still mourn them online, begging planters to bring them back. That kind of love doesn't fade, it just waits. PB Crisps weren't just a snack, they were comfort in a bag, and every bite tasted like nostalgia waiting to happen. Pudding roll-ups were one of the weirdest, most ambitious 90s experiments to ever hit grocery shelves. Someone at a snack company looked at pudding and thought, what if this was flat and chewy? The result was exactly that. Fruit leather-style strips made of actual pudding, rolled tight in colorful plastic. It sounded like dessert for the future, the kind of treat you'd imagine eating on a spaceship. But once you took a bite, reality hit. It stuck to your teeth like sugary glue and refused to let go. Kids didn't care. They were too hypnotized by the idea of unrolling their pudding like a toy. It sounded delicious until you actually tried to eat one. The texture was like pudding that got lost in space and came back confused. Sticky, floppy, and oddly tangy. It clung to your teeth and your soul. Kids still begged for them, mostly because commercials made them look like candy from the future. Every lunch table had that one brave kid who claimed to actually love them, wearing it like a badge of honor. The rest of us tried to believe them, chewing through the stickiness while convincing ourselves it was good. It wasn't, but we wanted it to be. You unrolled them, sniffed that sweet chocolate smell, and told yourself it would taste amazing. It didn't, but we kept trying anyway. Because in the 90s, everything was worth one more shot if it came in bright packaging. Pudding roll-ups were strange, short-lived, and oddly lovable. A reminder that even failed experiments can still earn a spot in snack history. Squeeze-It bottles were more than juice. They were power. These colorful plastic bottles were shaped like wiggly characters, each with a goofy face and personality. You didn't just drink them, you squeezed them. It was the kind of drink that made you feel invincible, like liquid confidence in a bottle. Every flavor had its own personality, from the sneaky orange to the mischievous red. When you twisted off the cap, that satisfying snap felt like starting an adventure. The commercials told kids to squeeze the fun out, and that's exactly what we did. Twisting off the cap felt like opening a potion, and every gulp turned your tongue an unnatural shade of blue or red. It wasn't just a drink, it was a playground status symbol. The flavors had names like Chucklin' Cherry and Silly Billy Strawberry because everything in the 90s had to rhyme or shout at you. It wasn't even about thirst. It was about having something colorful and cool in your hand at recess. Trading flavors became currency, and if you had the rare ones, you ruled lunch that day. It made you feel like the king of the jungle gym, one squeeze at a time. Lunch tables turned into trading posts where one Squeeze-It could buy you a cookie or 2 fruit snacks. It didn't taste like real fruit, but that was never the point. It tasted like childhood chaos and recess freedom. When they disappeared, it felt like someone turned the fun faucet off for good. Fruitopia wasn't just a drink, it was an attitude. Marketed to teens with a mix of poetry, neon colors, and deep slogans, it made juice sound like enlightenment. Bottles bore names like Strawberry Passion Awareness and The Great Beyond, like someone had turned your cafeteria fridge into an art gallery. Fruitopia didn't just want to quench your thirst, it wanted to make you think. Its labels had quotes about love, dreams, and creativity, as if a bottle of sugar water could open your third eye. And for a lot of us, it kind of did. It was the 90s answer to being cool without trying too hard. Fruitopia commercials looked like daydreams filmed through lava lamps, psychedelic, trippy, and irresistible. You didn't just drink Fruitopia, you vibed with it. Teachers stocked vending machines with it, and kids pretended to understand the meaning behind the label quotes. Holding a bottle of Fruitopia made you feel smarter, cooler, and maybe even a little mysterious. It was the drink of deep thoughts and locker graffiti. Even if it was just sugar and color, it felt profound. It wasn't juice, it was rebellion sweetened with sugar. It eventually faded when people realized it was basically fancy fruit punch, but the spirit of Fruitopia lives on. For a generation, it wasn't just a drink. It was the taste of trying to be deeper than we really were. And honestly, it worked. Trix yogurt was chaos in a cup, and that's why we loved it. Swirls of neon pink and purple yogurt looked radioactive, but somehow still delicious. It wasn't about nutrition, it was about fun you could eat with a spoon. Opening the foil lid was like unveiling a masterpiece, 2 bright colors spiraling together like a tie-dye dream. You could mix them, scoop one side, or swirl them until it turned into a wild shade of magenta. There was no wrong way to eat it, which made every kid feel like an artist. Opening a cup of Trix yogurt felt like uncovering treasure. Half the excitement was mixing the colors to make new ones, even if they ended up a muddy pink mess. The commercials promised it was for kids, and it absolutely was, because no adult could handle that much sugar before noon. It tasted somewhere between candy and dreams, with just enough tang to pretend it was healthy. Each bite came with that tart-sweet punch that somehow made you want another instantly. It didn't just fill you up, it made you feel alive, hyper, and ready to tackle another round of Mario Kart. It was breakfast, art, and energy in one colorful mess. School lunches weren't complete without one sitting proudly next to your sandwich. It was a time capsule of joy, a pastel explosion of flavor that defined what it meant to be a 90s kid. Even years later, when the yogurt briefly returned, people lined up just to taste nostalgia one more time. Squeeze-It yogurt tubes, better known as the early version of Go-Gurt, redefined breakfast and lunch forever. For the first time, yogurt wasn't something you needed a spoon for. You just tore open a tube and squeezed. That first cool squeeze was satisfying, messy but satisfying. You could eat it in the car, on the playground, or even while running to catch the school bus. It made every snack time feel spontaneous, like you were breaking some unspoken rule about how food was supposed to work. It felt high-tech, futuristic, and a little rebellious. Eating yogurt without utensils felt like breaking a rule, but in the coolest way possible. The commercials told you it was on the go, which meant you could eat it anywhere, from the bus stop to the backyard fort. The flavors were bold, the colors louder, and the concept revolutionary for every kid with zero patience. It was also a badge of coolness in every cafeteria. If you had one in your lunchbox, you were instantly 10% more popular. Yogurt had gone from boring breakfast food to something kids actually bragged about. Parents loved the convenience, kids loved the chaos. And once one kid in class had one, everyone else had to have it too. It was the unwritten rule of the 90s lunchroom. The tubes might have been sticky and impossible to finish without making a mess. But that was part of the fun. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles pies were the weirdest, most glorious green dessert the world has ever seen. Produced by Hostess, these flaky snack pies were filled with bright green vanilla pudding and stamped with cartoon turtle faces. They looked radioactive, tasted sugary beyond reason, and were loved by every kid with a pulse. The first time you opened one, it felt like unwrapping treasure from the sewer lair itself. The crust was golden, the filling neon. It was everything a kid's imagination could want in dessert form. It was so strange it almost shouldn't have worked, but it did. The packaging alone, neon green with the turtles in full action poses, made it feel like a collector's item before you even opened it. Inside? Pure madness. The filling oozed out like slime from a comic book, and somehow that was the appeal. Parents called them disgusting. Kids called them breakfast. They weren't just snacks, they were edible pop culture, sugary proof that marketing worked like black magic in the 90s. Even years later, grown adults talk about those pies like holy relics of the snack world. They weren't about taste, they were about identity, being part of the tribe that lived for cartoons, chaos, and sugar. It was candy, culture, and childhood all mashed into one neon green masterpiece. They disappeared with the Turtles' craze, but to this day, fans remember that first green bite as the sweetest act of rebellion ever sold in a wrapper. Pop Quiz popcorn turned movie nights into a mystery. Each bag came with a surprise color, blue, pink, purple, or green, and you didn't know which one you'd get until it popped. Butter? Too boring. 90s kids wanted fluorescent snacks that looked straight out of a cartoon. Watching that first kernel pop into a neon hue felt like witnessing a science experiment. It tasted the same as regular popcorn, but your brain swore it was more exciting. Every handful left your fingertips stained with curiosity and food dye. The box art looked like something from a Nickelodeon fever dream. Bold fonts, lightning bolts, and a promise that snack time would never be dull again. Kids bragged about getting the cool colors like purple, while parents wondered if this was what food had come to. It was loud, fun, and unnecessary. Everything the 90s did best. Pop Quiz faded out fast, but it remains a legend, proof that even popcorn could be radical. Sodalicious fruit snacks were the weird, fizzy candy imposters that confused your tongue in the best way. They were gummy fruit snacks flavored like soda, root beer, cola, lemon lime, and even Dr. Pepper-style fizz. You'd bite down expecting chewy sweetness and get hit with that unexpected tingle, like carbonation trapped in candy form. It was half magic, half madness, and entirely unforgettable. The smell alone, sweet, syrupy, and oddly nostalgic, could fill a whole room. The packaging was wild, splashed with soda bubbles and cartoon fruit, making it impossible to miss in the grocery aisle. Kids argued over the best flavor — cola was king, obviously — and swapped them during lunch trades like currency. They disappeared just as quickly as they arrived, too unique for their own good. But every 90s kid who tried them remembers that strange sparkle on their tongue, the feeling of tasting soda without sipping it. Sawdelicious wasn't just a snack. It was proof that the 90s had no idea where the line between candy and science experiment actually was. E.L. Fudge sandwich cookies were pure magic sealed in a tiny bag. Shaped like cheerful little elves from the Keebler treehouse, each cookie carried a mischievous grin and a layer of smooth chocolate cream inside. Opening the package felt like sneaking into a secret world run by talking elves and sugar. They had the perfect crunch. Crisp, buttery shortbread with a hint of sweetness that gave way to that silky chocolate center. It wasn't just a cookie. It was a tiny story you could eat, one bite of pure comfort wrapped in whimsy. The commercials made you believe those elves actually baked them by hand, somewhere in a hollow tree deep in the forest. Kids would pull the cookies apart, lick out the filling, and stick the halves together again just to prolong the magic. They were simple, innocent, and endlessly satisfying. In a decade obsessed with neon colors and sugar chaos, E.L. Fudge was the classic that grounded it all — nostalgia with a chocolate heart. The smell of those cookies was enough to bring back after-school afternoons and lunchbox surprises in an instant. Even now, opening a pack feels like time travel to an era when cartoons ended with jingles, recess felt endless, and every bite came with a sprinkle of imagination. String Thing candy was candy turned into chaos, the kind that made parents sigh and kids cheer. Imagine a long, sticky strand of wild fruit-flavored sugar you could twist, pull, knot, and eat like sweet spaghetti. It wasn't just candy, it was a toy, a dare, and an art project all at once. You could braid it, tie it into shapes, or stretch it across the table until it snapped. It came in tangy flavors like cherry, blue raspberry, and green apple, each one tasting like pure mischief. The packaging featured neon designs and goofy mascots that practically screamed 90s sugar rush. The fun wasn't just eating it, it was playing with it first. Lunch tables became battle zones of who could stretch their string thing the farthest without breaking it. Sure, it got stuck to everything — hands, desks, even hair — but that was half the thrill. It was the candy equivalent of a playground dare, messy and full of joy. No one cared about nutrition labels back then. They cared about color, flavor, and fun. String Thing disappeared quietly, but its legacy lives on in every parent who still remembers trying to peel one off their kid's sleeve hours after snack time. Bubble Jug gum was one of those candies that made 0 sense, and that was exactly why it worked. It came in a small pink or blue plastic jug, filled not with gumballs or sticks, but with mysterious flavored powder. You'd pour a little into your mouth, unsure what to expect, and it would somehow transform into bubble gum as you chewed. The first second was confusing. Was it candy dust? Was it gum? Then, like magic, the grains fused together into something chewy, sweet, and wildly artificial. It was pure childhood alchemy, the kind of absurd invention only the 90s could dream up. Kids would compare techniques — pour a little or pour half the jug at once. The brave ones did the latter, puffing out cheeks as the powder turned into an unmanageable wad of gum. Teachers hated it, parents didn't understand it, and kids absolutely loved it. It was science you could chew, rebellion in a jug. Every flavor — grape, watermelon, or classic bubble — came with the same result: a sticky mouth and an enormous grin. Bubble Jug wasn't about taste or convenience. It was about fun, pure and simple. And for one shining decade, fun was all a candy needed to become legendary. Reptar bars were proof that cartoons and candy together could create pure childhood perfection. Straight out of Nickelodeon's Rugrats, these chocolate bars weren't just a snack, they were an experience. The wrapper showed Reptar, the giant green dinosaur, roaring with sugar-fueled power, promising that inside was something wild. When you bit into one, bright green goo oozed from the center, instantly turning your tongue green. It was equal parts disgusting and delightful, exactly the kind of thing 90s kids lived for. You'd run to the mirror, stick out your tongue, and show it off like a trophy. They tasted like sweet chocolate mixed with a hint of fruity frosting, strange but unforgettable. Even if you didn't love the flavor, the spectacle made it worth every bite. The commercials made kids feel like eating a Reptar bar was a rite of passage, a sugary badge of 90s rebellion. It wasn't just candy, it was cartoon magic come to life. They were hard to find even then, making them feel like hidden treasure when you did. When they returned briefly decades later, adults lined up to relive that green-tongued glory. Reptar bars weren't just treats. They were a piece of television history you could unwrap, bite, and remember forever. Jell-O. Pudding Pops were the frozen miracle of the freezer aisle. They combined the creamy smoothness of pudding with the chill of an ice pop, creating something so simple yet so irresistible. Every kid begged their parents to buy them, and every parent swore they'd only last 2 days before the box was empty. The swirl of chocolate and vanilla wasn't just flavor, it was art. The first bite snapped cold, then melted into velvet sweetness that clung to your tongue. Bill Cosby's commercials made them sound like the dessert of the gods, and for a while, they were. The texture was unlike anything else, dense but soft, rich but refreshing. You could never eat just one. The Pops always left a chocolate smudge on your fingers and that nostalgic chill in your teeth that somehow made everything feel right in the world. They vanished in the early 2000s, leaving fans heartbroken and confused about how something so beloved could disappear. Decades later, people still hunt for copycat recipes, trying to recreate that frozen magic. Jell-O Pudding Pops were more than a snack. They were summer afternoons, after-school rewards, and the taste of a simpler world. Every freezer felt emptier the day they were gone. Lead-soldered canned goods were a ticking time bomb hiding in plain sight. Before the late 1980s, many canned foods, soups, vegetables, meats, were sealed with solder containing actual lead. It kept cans airtight but made every bite a potential health hazard. Researchers began noticing dangerously high lead levels in children's blood, especially in communities relying heavily on canned food. Acidic products like tomato soup were the worst offenders, dissolving metal into every spoonful. What started as a production shortcut turned into a national health crisis. Scientists discovered that acidic foods like tomatoes and fruits were leaching the metal right into people's meals. Children's products were the worst offenders, turning lunch into slow poisoning. When the studies came out, the FDA had no choice but to act. The new rules outlawed lead solder in all canned goods, forcing companies to overhaul production lines. For years, however, the damage had already been done, especially overseas where regulations came later. Looking back, it's shocking how normal it once seemed to trust metal sealed with toxins. The ban was a turning point in food safety and a sobering lesson in how progress sometimes hides poison under a label of convenience. Aids Diet Candy was one of those ideas that seemed genius until the world changed. Sold in small boxes, these chewy, chocolate-like cubes promised to take the edge off hunger while feeling indulgent. They actually worked, mostly because they tasted like vitamins and guilt. The commercials showed slim women smiling as they chewed, pretending it was delicious. The slogan, "AIDS helps you lose weight," became an instant disaster once the AIDS epidemic hit a decade later. By then, even loyal customers couldn't stomach the name, no matter how many rebrands the company tried. The name alone wasn't the problem in the 1970s. It was catchy, short, and even sophisticated. Then the 1980s arrived, and the global AIDS crisis made that name catastrophic. No marketing campaign could recover from the tragic coincidence. The product itself wasn't terrible, more caramel chew than candy. But no one could stomach the association. Within a few years, AIDS vanished completely. It remains one of the most unfortunate rebranding stories in history, a cautionary tale that timing can kill even the sweetest idea. Leave it to the 1950s to find a way to combine infants and industrial design. The glass baby bottle with a metal nipple was marketed as the hygienic choice for modern mothers. It promised durability, style, and the reassuring shine of polished chrome. In practice, it was a dentist's nightmare waiting to happen. Babies were encouraged to suckle from small metal spouts that turned freezing cold in winter and scorching hot in summer. The bottles themselves were heavy, slippery, and prone to shattering at the slightest drop. So basically, perfect for small, uncoordinated hands. Yet the ads were stunning. Rosy-cheeked babies drinking happily while mothers beamed at the future of feeding. Hospitals even endorsed them, believing glass and metal meant cleanliness. Plastic was considered cheap, rubber unsanitary. No one mentioned burns or lacerations. It was the golden age of over-engineering, where even baby care had to look like a rocket launch. Parents wanted sleek, scientific solutions to everything, even if they made no sense. By the end of the decade, common sense won. Soft silicone nipples replaced steel, and bottles became lighter and safer. But for a time, feeding your child looked like refueling a car. Clunky, dangerous, and somehow deeply optimistic. Wonder Bread was more than a loaf. It was an idea wrapped in cellophane. Its slogan, "Build strong bodies 12 ways," became one of the most famous promises in grocery history. Every slice was so soft, it nearly folded in your hand, the kind of bread that made peanut butter sandwiches stick to the roof of your mouth. To mid-century Americans, that was not a flaw. It was proof of modern science at work. Wonder Bread represented the optimism of the post-war boom, where even bread could be improved by technology. It was enriched, fortified, and perfectly uniform. No rough edges, no surprises. In a time when white bread symbolized progress, Wonder Bread was the hero of the lunchbox generation. It turned the simple act of eating into a showcase for modern innovation, one sliced loaf at a time. For millions of kids, it tasted like safety and normalcy, something soft to come home to. Its pastel dots and bright red logo brightened every grocery aisle, promising consistency in an unpredictable world. Wonder Bread wasn't just about nourishment. It was about the confidence that America was on the rise, and every bite was proof of that promise. Few foods say future and fear quite like the 1950s potted meat luncheon loaf, an edible contradiction trapped in translucent gelatin. Billed as the modern meal, it promised protein, convenience, and elegance, all packed neatly into a shimmering cube. Housewives opened the can with a satisfying hiss, only to reveal a pinkish slab wobbling like something from another planet. The gelatin was meant to seal in freshness, though it mostly sealed in terror. Still, the advertisements were stunning. Smiling families slicing perfect meat squares garnished with pineapple rings and lettuce. It looked clean, futuristic, like something astronauts might eat at a dinner party on Mars. And for a country obsessed with modernity, that was enough. No one wanted to cook anymore, not when canned chemistry could do the job faster. The taste? Imagine bologna with stage fright. It slid, it quivered, it haunted you. But to 1950s consumers, the gelatin loaf was proof humanity had conquered food itself. It wasn't just a meal, it was a message. The kitchen of tomorrow had arrived, and it came with preservatives. For better or worse, the gelatin craze turned ordinary meals into edible science experiments, each one wobbling proudly under fluorescent light. Over time, these meat miracles disappeared from shelves, victims of changing tastes and better judgment. But their legacy lives on in every molded salad and canned mystery meat that dares call itself gourmet. Campbell's Pepper Pot Soup was the can that tested the nation's limits. Marketed as a hearty Caribbean-inspired classic, it featured tripe, cow stomach, as the main ingredient. The label showed a warm, spicy bowl of stew, but reality hit harder. When the can opened, the smell alone cleared the room faster than a fire drill. The chunks of tripe were tough enough to bounce, and the broth had an unsettling gray sheen. Some people tried adding hot sauce or salt, but nothing could save it from itself. The broth was murky, the meat chewy, and the smell hung in the air long after the can was gone. People tried disguising it with spices, crackers, even ketchup. Nothing worked. It was one of those meals that made you appreciate how good other bad soups were. The smell was strong, the texture was chewy, and the flavor lingered in ways no one asked for. Families bought it once out of curiosity and immediately regretted it. Even pets refused to help finish the bowl. Campbell's tried to pitch it as exotic and bold, but most people just called it weird. It lived in the back of pantries for years, waiting for the apocalypse that never came. Eventually, it disappeared quietly, taking with it one of the strangest chapters in canned soup history. Sodium cyclamate. Sweeteners were the diet craze before the diet craze. Found in everything from light pudding to slim sodas, cyclamate promised sweet flavor without calories, the holy grail of 1980s food science. People believed in it, companies profited from it, and health agencies panicked over it. It was the decade's answer to indulgence without consequence, and every brand wanted in on the trend. Cafeterias, bakeries, and soda fountains stocked it proudly, certain they were serving the future of healthy sweetness. Then the studies hit, lab rats, cancer scares, and a wave of panic that turned every diet label into a potential danger sign. Early animal studies hinted that the additive might be carcinogenic, and by the mid-1980s, the United States pulled it off the market completely. Europe followed soon after, though a few countries still clung to it for years. Consumers were confused, wondering why yesterday's miracle was suddenly today's poison. The ban forced food companies to scramble for substitutes, giving rise to the aspartame era, a solution that sparked even more controversy. For many 1980s dieters, cyclamate was their first taste of betrayal, a chemical sweetheart that turned out to be a bad relationship. Diet shakes in paint can-style tins were the height of scientific dieting and the bottom of human appetite. These oversized metal cans promised controlled calories and perfect figures, as long as you could choke down what was inside. The shakes were sold in flavors like chocolate, vanilla, and tropical, though they all tasted like sweet rust. The powder stuck to everything: blenders, spoons, your throat, and the metallic smell never left the kitchen. Opening one felt like prying into an industrial accident. The scoop inside was always buried, forcing you to dig through clouds of powder that coated your arms like chalk. Mixing it with milk turned the liquid gray, not brown, and somehow made it thicker than cement. The aftertaste lingered like a chemical warning. You weren't just dieting. You were participating in a science experiment gone wrong. Companies called them complete meal solutions, but most people needed a real meal just to recover from the experience. Advertisements showed glamorous models holding giant tins like trophies, as if suffering were chic. In the end, the only weight most people lost was their patience. Those cans promised control, but they mostly delivered a reminder: food should never taste like aluminum ambition. Only in the 1950s could someone look at a car ashtray and think, you know what this needs? A steak. Car ashtrays that doubled as mini grills were the ultimate gadget for the man on the go, or the man who just couldn't wait for dinner. Designed to plug into the car's cigarette lighter, these chrome curiosities promise to cook your meal while you cruise. Picture it: Dad behind the wheel, one hand on the steering column, the other turning a sizzling burger on the dashboard. The smell of gasoline, tobacco, and half-cooked beef filled the cabin like some dystopian roadside diner. It was marketed as the perfect road trip companion, ideal for busy executives and outdoorsmen on the move. Safety warnings were non-existent, because of course they were. One wrong turn and you weren't just flipping your lunch, you were flipping your car. Still, it captured everything Americans loved about the decade: convenience, confidence, and a reckless belief that anything could be improved with a little electricity. The ads boasted, "No smoke, no mess," which was a blatant lie. The only thing they didn't lie about was that you'd never go hungry again, just possibly unconscious from the fumes. By the end of the decade, fire departments everywhere had seen enough dashboard barbecue disasters to quietly retire the invention. But for a brief, glorious moment, the open road smelled like progress, bad decisions, and burnt hot dogs. Jell-O gelatin molds turned every dessert table into a display of edible architecture. Bright, colorful, and a little bizarre, they were the showpieces of mid-century kitchens. Every family had a favorite combination: pineapple chunks, marshmallows, even shredded carrots suspended in translucent wobbling towers. Jell-O wasn't just food, it was performance. Mothers took pride in their molds, comparing layers and colors like painters admiring canvases. When that dessert wobbled onto the table, it wasn't just dessert, it was applause for creativity disguised as dinner. It represented control over nature itself. Sweetness, color, and texture, all perfectly contained in a shimmering mold. For housewives, it was creativity made visible, proof that the home could still be an art form. The sound of that wobbly jiggle at dinner parties became a symbol of pride, the centerpiece of gatherings from church socials to Christmas dinners. It photographed beautifully, tasted nostalgic, and looked futuristic. Kids loved its bounce. Adults admired its precision. Jell-O made dessert something both playful and sophisticated. In a decade obsessed with presentation and perfection, it captured the exact balance between science and showmanship. Every mold was a small, sweet victory for the modern homemaker. Crystal Pepsi was one of the boldest and briefest soda experiments of the late 1980s. It promised purity, innovation, and the excitement of a cola without color. The clear, caffeine-free drink came in sleek glass bottles that looked more like something from a health spa than a vending machine. The marketing was futuristic, clean, minimalist, and dripping with 1980s confidence. Commercials showed waterfalls, lasers, and people in white suits drinking clarity in a bottle. It was Pepsi's boldest move yet, but the taste didn't match the hype. People lined up to try it, expecting magic, and got confusion instead. The flavor was flat, oddly sweet, and missing the bite that made cola famous. Pepsi called it clarity, but most called it weird. Within a year, the product fizzled, joining the ranks of marketing myths that burned bright and vanished fast. Critics later called it the most 1980s drink ever made, all style, no substance, and a little too confident in its own coolness. Crystal Pepsi may have been banned by poor sales, not law, but its spirit fits perfectly in this list. An idea too clean for a world that wanted its cola dark, caffeinated, and unapologetically messy. Swanson Great Starts. Breakfast TV dinners were frozen optimism at its frostiest. They came in divided trays featuring scrambled eggs, pancakes, and sausages, all perfectly soggy by the time they hit your plate. The idea was breakfast made easy, but it ended up tasting like Sunday morning regret. The pancakes absorbed the syrup like sponges soaking in despair. The eggs had a rubbery snap that made you question if they were ever eggs at all. Even the sausage, supposedly the star, was gray and flavorless, like breakfast had just given up. The eggs looked like yellow sponges, and the pancakes had the consistency of damp sponges. Even the syrup was trapped in its own compartment, slowly merging into every corner of the tray. The smell alone warned you that no great start was coming. The pancakes were rubbery, the eggs tasted like cardboard, and the syrup managed to be both too thin and too sweet. Even the sausage looked tired, gray, greasy, and spiritually defeated. It was convenience at its most depressing, the kind of meal that made you rethink your entire morning. Swanson had cornered the dinner market, but breakfast proved too fragile to freeze. Great Starts turned into a short-lived joke, a frozen reminder that some things are better made fresh or not at all. Minute Rice was the miracle of the instant age. No more boiling, stirring, or waiting. It promised perfectly fluffy rice in 5 minutes flat. To a 1950s homemaker juggling kids, appliances, and expectations, it was nothing short of a revelation. Convenience had become a national value, and Minute Rice was its purest expression. It was the future poured out of a box, where effort and patience were replaced by trust in modern technology. For a generation that had watched the world move faster every year, even dinner had to keep up. It turned cooking into something nearly effortless, giving families more time to sit, talk, and eat together. It was the kind of progress that fit neatly in a box and sat proudly on the shelf beside all the other modern miracles. Rice, once a tricky side dish, was suddenly foolproof. You just added water and trust. The packaging practically beamed confidence. This was the rice of the future. And in the hands of post-war America, that mattered more than flavor. It was about consistency, control, and the comfort of knowing dinner would always turn out right. Minute Rice wasn't just food, it was peace of mind, one scoop at a time. Fat-free, Snackwell's cookies were the guilt-free dream of 1980s grocery shoppers, and the biggest nutritional scam of its time. Introduced during the anti-fat craze, these cookies promised indulgence without consequences. They were everywhere, in office kitchens, lunchboxes, and late-night commercials urging people to snack well, live well. But to replace fat, manufacturers added mountains of sugar, starch, and artificial ingredients, creating a fat-free dessert that was anything but healthy. People devoured them by the sleeve, believing the lack of fat made them immune to guilt. Dietitians warned it was marketing trickery, but the promise of no fat, no problem was too sweet to resist. For a while, Snackwell's even became a cultural symbol of the era, the cookie that let you believe health came in a box. Nutritionists later revealed they often had more calories than regular cookies. Consumers didn't lose weight. They gained confusion. The cookies were sweet, addictive, and left you hungrier after every serving. For years, people believed they had found the loophole to dieting, until obesity rates kept climbing. By the 1990s, Snackwell's quietly reformulated or vanished from shelves, another casualty of misplaced trust in food science. It was the 1980s in a nutshell. We cut the fat, but somehow ended up with more junk. Tab Clear Cola was the soda that asked, "What if Diet Cola could also look like seltzer?" And no one answered. It was the early 1990s strange child of 1970s diet culture. A clear cola that claimed to be revolutionary, but mostly just confusing. Marketed as a pure alternative, it looked like water, tasted like chemicals, and vanished like vapor. The first sip was a contradiction. The taste of cola without color, sweetness without satisfaction. Pepsi drinkers were puzzled. Coca-Cola fans were horrified. Even the logo looked lost, floating somewhere between a science project and a warning label. Tab Clear tried to capitalize on the clear beverage trend, but people couldn't trust something that looked like club soda and claimed to be cola. It was all the artificial flavor of diet soda with none of the charm. Within a year, the product fizzled, literally and figuratively, leaving behind half-empty bottles in vending machines and the faint smell of corporate panic. It was later revealed that Coca-Cola intentionally made it confusing to sabotage its own competition, which somehow makes sense, because nothing says bad idea like a soda that made people wish for regular Tab. Of all the 1950s food inventions, canned bread might be the strangest, and somehow the most practical. It came in shiny tins that promised freshness preserved for years. The dough was baked directly inside the can, resulting in a dense brown loaf that slid out like a sponge. It was oddly satisfying to open, and surprisingly edible with enough butter or jam. Advertisers pitched it as the future of convenience, perfect for camping, lunchboxes, and the inevitable nuclear apocalypse. Families loved it because it felt both comforting and futuristic, a loaf built to survive anything, even the end of the world. It was proof that America's appetite for innovation extended all the way to its pantry shelves. Housewives stocked it next to canned peaches and Spam, proud of their preparedness. It was comfort food with a metal edge, part bakery, part bunker ration. The taste? Sweet, slightly metallic, and unforgettably weird. Canned bread captured the contradictions of the era perfectly: optimistic, paranoid, and determined to can everything, even tradition. It's still made in small corners of New England today, but as a curiosity, not a comfort. Back then, though, it was survival you could slice. Kool-Aid wasn't just a drink, it was a ritual. Every kid in the 1950s knew the sound of that powder hitting a pitcher and the rush of color swirling through the water. With just sugar, water, and imagination, a world of flavor appeared for pennies. It was bright, sweet, and affordable, the perfect symbol of middle-class fun. The first sip was pure excitement, too sweet, too colorful, and somehow perfect every single time. It wasn't just a beverage, it was joy in motion, stirred up by tiny hands and summer light. Kids loved it because they could make it themselves, stirring with wide grins as the water turned electric red or neon green. Parents loved it because it brought laughter to the table without breaking the grocery budget. Kool-Aid was a kind of magic, the ability to make something wonderful from nearly nothing. It was the taste of summer, birthday parties, and endless afternoons. The smiling face on the packet was more than a mascot. It was a promise of joy in liquid form. In an era of post-war optimism, Kool-Aid was liquid happiness poured straight from the pitcher, a reminder that even small things could make life feel extraordinary. High-sodium frozen dinners were the guilty comfort of 1980s convenience culture. Every brand from Swanson to Banquet filled freezer aisles with Salisbury steak, mashed potatoes, and gravy that could outlast the apocalypse. They were fast, cheap, and dependable, the perfect meal for anyone too tired to cook after a long day. The downside? Each tray contained more salt than an ocean wave. Doctors began linking them to hypertension and heart disease, and suddenly, convenience looked like a killer. What started as a quick dinner fix turned into a health crisis on a plate. The sodium levels weren't just high, they were astronomical, often topping 2,000 milligrams in a single meal. Nutritionists joked that a Swanson dinner was less food and more brine in a box. The FDA's evolving nutritional guidelines in the late 1980s forced companies to pull or reformulate entire product lines. The old recipes disappeared, replaced by heart-healthy versions that never quite tasted the same. For people who grew up on them, it felt like losing a piece of home, the salty, buttery kind. Frozen dinners didn't die, they just got watered down, literally and figuratively. But those who remember the originals can still taste that sodium-soaked nostalgia and the guilt that came with every delicious bite. Clam juice bottles were the sad, fishy ghosts of 1970s grocery store shelves. Sold as both a health elixir and a kitchen essential, they were supposed to make cooking faster and easier, a splash of ocean flavor right from your fridge. In reality, they were briny nightmares waiting to ruin dinner. One sip, and you'd swear you'd just licked the side of a boat. Most people bought it once out of curiosity, then left it to haunt their refrigerator forever. The label promised pure sea freshness, but what it delivered was low tide in a bottle. Even professional chefs admitted it tasted like seawater filtered through regret. Advertisers claimed it was a natural energy booster, rich in minerals and flavor, but no amount of marketing could mask the fact that it smelled like low tide and regret. Home cooks tried using it in chowders or sauces, but one pour was enough to ruin an entire meal or a marriage. The bottle itself was a trap, glass, slim, and slightly foggy, daring you to forget it existed. Once opened, it would migrate to the back of the refrigerator, where it would live forever, untouched, unspoiled, and immortal. Even decades later, people still find half-empty bottles of it behind the mustard, preserved like relics from the age of bad ideas. Clam juice was not a beverage, not a shortcut, and definitely not food. It was proof that the 1970s could sell anything once, but only once. The 1950s were an era of bizarre inventions, but few were as hauntingly memorable as the mechanical ice cream cone licker. Marketed as a fun training toy, it featured a fake cone topped with a spinning rubber tongue that rotated rapidly when turned on. Children were supposed to hold it up and practice licking without wasting real ice cream. The result? A generation of traumatized kids and confused parents. The ads called it educational, teaching hand-eye coordination through dessert simulation. But the reality looked more like a carnival nightmare. The rubber tongue made unsettling slurping noises, often flicking droplets of melted ice cream substitute across the room. Sometimes it jammed mid-lick, leaving the toy whirring angrily while kids screamed. It was the perfect symbol of the decade's faith in machines, proof that even pleasure could be automated, and humanity would be better for it. Parents bought it anyway, because the 1950s were the golden age of gimmicks, when no one wanted to be left behind by progress, no matter how creepy it looked. The mechanical licker was soon discontinued, likely after realizing that children didn't need help eating ice cream. They were already experts. But for a brief, bizarre moment, the future had a face, and it was a spinning rubber tongue. Which of these forgotten 1990s grocery treasures would you grab off the shelf again? Tell us your favorite in the comments, hit like if this brought back sweet memories, and subscribe so we can keep unboxing the best snacks from your past together.